Good morning, Danny. Thanks for jumping on the podcast this morning, mate. How are we doing?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, good day for you.
Yeah, not too bad, mate. So the reason why I got you on this morning, I wanted to discuss people dealing or living with SEND, and what I mean by that is special educational needs and disabilities. And we're going to look at a few um, different headings. The first one I want to look at is sport. How are people who live with SEND, how are they, what barriers and disadvantages do they experience when we come at looking at sport?
Yeah, so obviously, disabilities and stuff. If you've got physical disabilities, obviously, they will struggle to take part, which is obviously an issue. But there's a lot of disability sport out there now, which is becoming more and more, especially disability rugby has become a massive thing. Uh, I think the thing for what we the people who are sort of what we would term neurodivergent, the ADHD, autism spectrum, that type of stuff. Uh, for me, obviously, they're going into the sports clubs, and uh, you know what it's like. You playing, if like I played rugby my whole life, and it tends to be someone who's coaching the kids team who's not necessarily a professional or anything like that. They're just normally a mum or dad who's taking the time out to do it. So obviously they don't necessarily have the skills in order to be able to work with people. So one of the things we were looking at is creating some type of training course that we could deliver to people, so that they're aware of the different presentations from people who've got any special educational needs, uh, and how you can create an environment that they're able to thrive in. Something dead simple like, my daughter's dyslexic, so she struggles. She plays football and rugby. She will struggle to get a concept in her head. So she will have the coaches will tell her how to do things and stuff like that. Whereas until she's lived that experience and something clicks within her, and she then so a lot of it is about being patient,
Yeah.
and having that giving people that time around, being able to have that space, because a lot of the time within sport, people just want to win. They get that sort of winning attitude, and for me, I've always had that approach of, this is the thing that's going to form a lot of your life skills going forward. And if you've got that additional need in place and that additional barrier that you're facing, I think it's really important that you're understood even at that base level, where this is something that you can live with. This is something that you can overcome. It's not a reason for you to not take part in activities.
Yeah, for sure. I think from my limited experience on the subject, I run a jiu-jitsu club, and we have a number of children specifically who come in with SEND. Um, and a big realization for me was that how different each one of the
Yeah,
kids is on the, if we call it a spectrum or a scale, whatever the right way of phrasing it is. So you've got to treat each individual on a case by case basis. And what we rely on, because I've got no real training in that topic, to your point before, we rely on the parents
yeah,
helping us out to understand their child. Obviously, they know. Off the top of my head, one of the biggest things that I didn't realize is we were in a mill, so it's the actual noise that affects some of the kids, like the echoes and stuff. And obviously, that's only one individual, but I never even give that a second thought that the echo in the room was the like the factor that this particular
yeah,
child deal
yeah.
with.
And that's the same, like, if you're out on a rugby field or a football field, or any sort of team sport, there's a lot of noise around you. So sometimes it's just something simple like, we live in a world of technology now, and if you're planning a session and you can send that session over to that kid's mom or dad and say, this is what we're doing, this is the things that they're going to need to take
Mhm.
in from that session. It's a really simple thing to be able to do, and it doesn't have to be anything, massively, taxing for you. It's just a case of this is the session tonight. This is what we're running, because them external factors, especially around communication, I think, especially around kids who are autistic, that sort of sensory overload, is something that as community coaches you need to be really aware of.
Massively, yeah. Yeah, we have and again it was just a simple fix where this particular child was just earplugs.
Yeah.
When they've had the instruction of the technique that we're doing, they just wear earplugs and that negates a lot of that
Yeah.
sensory overload that you're speaking about, yeah.
Yeah, I think like as I say, my daughter plays rugby league, and I've just done this sort of level 2 rugby league coaching, so I coach the team down at Pilks, and to be fair, the rugby league coaching element of it is it does mention around sensory factors when you're coaching, which I think I was really impressed with, because the sort of system that you go through is there's a set way of displaying a drill. So you would say, like, you would talk through it, you would show them how to do it from different angles, and then you do a silent walkthrough of the drill.
Right, okay.
Obviously, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, that's not how I was coached, and that's not, so sometimes you bring your own barriers
Mhm.
with you and say, well, that's not what I've done. When I was coach rugby, they just used to shout at me and I listened, and if I got it wrong, I'd get punished. So I think it's really important for people who've got experience in sport to not just go, well, that's how I did it, and that's the way forward. And certainly the RFL course, it looks at them factors, and I think it's that argument of, you don't necessarily need to have the experience of rugby or the sport to be able to coach it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you can bring in, if you're a brand new coach to a sport, then you can bring in the most up to date ways of doing stuff, because you're not bringing your own baggage with you.
Yeah. So is that what this course will entail, then what you're looking at starting to provide?
Yeah, so I think understanding is a massive one, as you said yourself. Something like the noise in a room isn't it doesn't come into the head of someone who hasn't got a sensory issue. It's
Yeah.
not something that you even worry about. You just sort of I think awareness and understanding is probably the start for everyone, and just to make people aware of why that actually is. So what is that sort of, they call it sensory processing disorder, that goes alongside autism. So when you see like kids who are flapping and stuff like that,
Yeah.
the hands are flapping, that's just sensory processing. So it's understanding stuff like that. It's a really basic thing, but understanding things like that can really help in terms of spotting issues or spotting conditions, and also bringing things in. And a lot of the time, you said about relying on the parents. Sometimes the parents haven't got that support in the background. You
Right.
know, if you've got a kid who's in maybe a special educational school, or in that type of setting, then they may have that expertise. If they're in a mainstream school and they maybe haven't been diagnosed, there's all these factors, and just understanding that and helping them to take part, I suppose, is the big thing. And yeah, just creating environments. You know yourself, you create a good environment in anything, and behaviour changes. So if you can create it for people so that everyone can take part, then that's obviously really important.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that just come to mind then, and throughout us talking, I've had in my head that these children or people are already diagnosed. If you're a sport club and kids are coming to you wanting to play sport, but they're not necessarily diagnosed, what can coaches do? Is there any obvious, not obvious, that's the wrong word. Is there any signs and behavior traits that coaches could be looking out for to understand that there might be something something that we need to go down the line with here and maybe look at the diagnosis with the parents and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the diagnosis and the signs tend to be spotted within school.
Right.
So
Okay.
again, all the clubs will have sort of safeguarding officers and stuff like that and their own procedures in place to go down that route. If you've got a kid who's displaying certain behaviours, it might just be a case of mentioning it to a parent. The stigma isn't there now in terms of children with SEN. Back in the day, it would have been quite a difficult conversation, but especially around sort of the sport time involved in rugby and football, the ADHD and stuff like that is a really common thing to see because it is a really good way of getting that release for anyone really, not just kids with SEN. But if you have that suspicion or you notice something and you have that, speak with the parents, speak with your safeguarding. That would be my advice. But as I say, the stigma isn't really there now. But if you've got a kid who's engaging in education, then it probably 99 times out of 100, there will be someone within the education setting who's spotted that issue. But that doesn't mean that they've been diagnosed, because there's a huge backlog and a huge wait to get anyone diagnosed with anything now from school. So a lot of kids they'll notice issues within the first couple of years within school, but they might not get a diagnosis until they're in secondary or maybe late primary into secondary.
So just in closing then, before we finish on the topic of sport then, just to summarise, Dan, what are things, or the top three things, one or two things that a sports coach can do to create an environment for people with SEND?
So you've got to have that knowledge and that sort of awareness of the issues. So definitely, if you do suspect, then read up on it. So as you said, something dead simple like a pair of earplugs could be the difference between a kid taking part and not taking part, which is obviously, we obviously want kids as much as we can to be involved in any type of sport. Probably speak, adapt the way you coach, be open to adapting, because as I say, a lot of the time you'll have barriers and baggage that you bring yourself. So be adaptable, be flexible with how you would approach a certain thing, and be patient. Forget about winning. Sometimes I know it's a difficult thing when you're involved in sport, and when you've won, it does become addictive. But what we're doing for young people is essentially giving them life skills and helping them to move forward. So no one's going to remember who won the under-12s game of football that you played in when you're 30. But if you made to feel bad, people remember stuff like that for the rest of their lives. So keep treating people with respect and be adaptable would be the main two.
Mm-hmm. Awesome advice, mate. So if anybody wanted to maybe contact yourself or find out more information about this, what can they do? How can they approach that?
Yeah, just if you go through Max Edge, just go through Max Edge, and obviously there's a lot of community projects out there for stuff, especially around St Helens. There's some really good projects happening. There's things for like young carers and stuff like that, because in terms of like having a young person or someone in your life with special educational needs, it's really important that you understand the impact that has on people around them as well. So, look out for the projects around you. They are really good. There's a lot there to design. A lot of charities doing good work, and certainly within education as well. So, speak with your schools. Put pressure on. I know that sounds a bit over the top, but put pressure on people. If you're not happy, if you've got them, trust your instincts, and push in the schools to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing.
Amazing, mate. Thanks for your time this morning.
Cheers, lad.